Transformation is that key place where you're going to be able to create a permanent solution. Don Miguel Ruiz actually talks about 3 solutions. Solution 3 is the most dynamic metamorphosis. It offers you a choice to complete your awakening by going through initiation. It's asking you to walk through the desert where all of your demons turn into angels. When I was asked to take a leap of faith this past year, it was very difficult. There was a lot of crying. There's been a lot of crying, constant crying. I felt so overwhelmed. It was unlike any choice I've ever made before. This wasn't a lighthearted choice, and there's so many consequences that unfolded that I was not expecting. I wasn't expecting it to be so hard. And there are so many times I felt like giving up and just going back to the way I did things before. But the thing is, there was a buildup of courage and faith that went into making that choice that I just didn't want to disappoint myself. I didn't want to give up. Hey beautiful souls, welcome back to the channel, Beautiful Awakening with Shantia. In today's topic, we're going to be discussing Metamorphosis, how to permanently change your life. So I'm not talking about a temporary shift that's going to temporarily solve your current issues or your current problems in life. I'm talking about a permanent solution, and that's transformation. That is about going through your metamorphosis. This past couple of years has taught me a lot about metamorphosis, what that means. I was very intentional, I would have to say about 4 years ago, about wanting to go through a metamorphosis. And I'm going to go ahead and share my experience with you guys, what I learned. What was spectacular is this book, which I bought years ago, before this powerful metamorphosis started to take place in my life. The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I'm sure many of you have heard of this book. So I think I actually did read it years ago when I bought it, and then I forgot about it, and then I reread it again, either a year and a half ago, probably around that time. I reread it again, and then looking back at it today, I could see that it had so many key points that I didn't understand until I went through some of these experiences. So I want to share with you what that is today, because there's a reason why this is a bestseller. Why people love this book is because the information here is absolutely true. And I'm going to share a portion of the 4 Agreements. I'm not going to talk you through this entire book. We're going to be focusing on the theme of metamorphosis and transformation, because that was the thing that piqued my interest when I read it a year and a half ago. When I read the part about transformation and how do we master transformation in our life, because transformation is that key place where you're going to be able to create a permanent solution. So there are a lot of, wonderful ideas for how people can shift things in their life. We can manifest, we can journal, we can script certain things, we can pray about it. Perhaps we can change our self-concept, we can do affirmations, but a lot of these are temporary fixes. And so I want you to pull back, and I want you to see the bigger picture into how you can completely transform your life. That's what we're going to be focusing on, is this complete transformation. What does that actually mean? It has actually less to do with self-concepts and more to do with letting go of them. So I'm going to go into depth about that, and I'm going to keep this book as my companion here, referencing. I actually, I think I did mark some of the pages with notes I had in it, but most of my notes are in front of me here. But I will be referencing, just kind of talking about the last chapter here in the book where they talk about transformation, because that was the part that piqued my interest. Don Miguel Ruiz actually talks about 3 solutions. 3 solutions for creating that permanent transformation. So today we are most definitely going to be talking about how can you co-create a permanent, joyous life. That's what we want. Nobody wants temporary happiness. We want permanent joy. Permanent joy. And this means that you're going to have to change some things. You can't look back. And the beautiful thing about going through an actual metamorphosis is you won't be able to look back. You'll be so disinterested in the previous version of yourself that all you're interested in doing is becoming the version of yourself that is most authentic, that is true, that is the most brightest, beautiful version of you that wants to come out. And it's already there. It's existed since the time you were born, and it's being refined. And it has to be refined through your experiences. So truly, when we're working on ourselves, we start to experience some kind of warmth that starts to bubble up from within us because of the work that we've been putting into self-forgiveness and self-love. Now, I'm not going to discuss the 4 agreements in this book by Don Miguel Ruiz. You can look them up yourself. I'll list them. I'll list them here. What are the 4 agreements? But we're actually going to be focusing primarily on transformation. For the 6th chapter of the book, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about breaking old agreements. So this chapter is called The Toltec Path to Freedom. Breaking Old Agreements. And according to this book, it starts on page 93. That to me was the most pivotal. All of it was good. All of it was absolutely the best chunk of self-love, information, self-improvement, spiritual information you could possibly find. He puts it all in this small book. It's all here for you. And this is definitely a wonderful companion to keep by your side if you ever want to reference back to yourself. What are those agreements, right? What are those agreements that you're making with yourself? Those promises you're making to yourself to really change your life. So in that 6th chapter, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about getting rid of or destroying the parasite with 1,000 heads that lives in our head. So this parasite lives in our minds. And the 1,000 heads is a representation of all of our fears. All of our fears. We have so many fears. That's the thing that keeps us from being able to feel free, feel childlike, and have fun. It's our fear. And he offers 3 solutions. Let's go ahead and talk about the 3 solutions. So solution 1 is to cut off each head one by one. This is where you face each fear one by one. So the thing with solution 1 is it takes time. It's a gradual process, but it's a permanent solution. So if you could sit down and make a list of all the things that scare you, then there's usually a counter part to that. There's the answer. So for example, for me, I feared public speaking for so long. I absolutely avoided it, didn't want to do it. Every time I had school presentations, I would just absolutely be terrified. My heart would be racing. I would be getting anxiety, so I avoided it if I could. I decided, because I felt called to communication and I felt called to be in front of people, to sign up for Toastmasters, which is a public speaking group. And as soon as I joined, as soon as I started getting in front of a crowd of people, I immediately loved it. It was awesome. It was so scary and terrifying. And the funny part is I actually joined during COVID. So during that COVID period, 2020 is right around the time they were doing mostly online meetings. They weren't meeting in person, but I was so nervous. Even just sitting in front of the computer and giving a presentation, to feel all these people watching me, it just made me so nervous. And then to get feedback about it, it was super overwhelming, but I loved it. And immediately after I had that opportunity to do my first speech, it was like a 5 to 7 minute speech. I think it was around 7 minutes long. After I did my first speech, I knew that this is something I absolutely wanted to continue to do. So I've been at it for 4 years now, staying strong. And that was a fear for me that I've been overcoming. And it's a slow process where you're overcoming these fears because you're kind of tackling them one by one. Just imagine all the fears that you have. So a lot of people do this, right? So they try to overcome their fears. Like, okay, maybe the fear of talking to people, or the fear of putting yourself out there creatively, or putting your ideas out there creatively. Once you do that and you hit the green go gas, that's what I meant to say. Once you hit the gas, there's no looking back. Once you do it, you just feel so much more powerful. And if you keep at it, it ends up completely transforming you. So solution 2 is to stop feeding the parasite. Essentially, you are starving the parasite. The challenging part of starving the parasite is this is where you probably get into a lot of meditation and you learn how to cultivate discipline and emotional control. So Don Miguel Ruiz talked about how we have the judge and we have the victim. I'm also going to go ahead and post the judge and the victim from Carolyn Myth's Oracle deck. From that Oracle deck, I actually learned that we have all of these different archetypes and soul contracts that we're connected to, and we're here to overcome them. The victim archetype is what every single one of us has. Every single human being has a victim archetype, soul contract to overcome, as well as the judge. The judge I've discussed in my previous videos is about the last judgment. This is about relinquishing duality. Duality is where we feel like there's a right and there's a wrong. There's a yes, there's a no. There's a black and there's a white. And this is where we realize that actually the black is the white, the right is the wrong. This is where we start to understand that it's all connected, and it's our judgment of ourselves and the situation or of other people that's keeping us from being able to thrive. It's keeping us from our happiness. And the victim in us is the victim mentality, where we constantly think that things are happening to us, and in fact we think things are only happening to us because of our ego. We just think we're the only ones going through this challenging experience when everyone is actually going through their own version of their challenges. We all have the same challenges to take on. I guess when it comes to the load or the burden, it's the same. It's just some people numb it, they put it off, they're in denial of it. Some people face it, and those who face it are the brave ones, the chosen ones who choose themselves. So solution 2 is you stop feeding the parasite, you stop feeding those negative thoughts, and you develop emotional control. Rudolf Steiner has these practices where you develop your thinking, your feeling, and your willing, and I feel like this perfectly fits in with solution number 2. And you learn to work on your thoughts. I think Eckhart Tolle also has a really good approach to learning how to be present and watch your thought forms. Instead of getting involved in what you're thinking, watch the thought forms. Instead, find a way to just be present in your body, and you'll find that you're receptive to everything in a very positive way. Solution number 3 for us to go through that transformation is called initiation of the dead. And this is a symbolic death that exists in all cultures since the beginning of time, is the symbolic death. This is where we essentially kill the parasite without harming the body. So this is faster. It's a faster transformation, but it's difficult to do. And as Don Miguel points to, you have to have the courage to face the angel of death to go through this transformation. Before we get into describing more of solution number 3, just based off of hearing about all of these solutions, they're obviously talking about taking back your power. And we see this a lot with the Emperor card. Take back your power. Take your power back away from the previous agreements, right? The agreements that you previously made that made you feel disempowered, and replace each and every single one of these agreements with a new belief system. That is what Don Miguel Ruiz is pointing to when he says making these 4 agreements. Whatever you said about yourself, about how life doesn't work, about anything you think about yourself that is disempowering you, taking you away from your power, is an agreement that has to go in exchange for something else. So he's essentially talking about reprogramming your subconscious mind. You have to tell yourself different things. Solution 3 is the most dynamic metamorphosis. It offers you a choice to complete your awakening by going through initiation. It's asking you to walk through the desert where all of your demons turn into angels. So the key word in solution number 3 was initiation. Initiation is an awakening. It's a self-aware awakening. Now, subconsciously, spirit is always calling us towards an awakening, and in some way we're actually working towards it, though sometimes very much resisting it. Many people are resisting their awakening. But if you choose to go through your initiation, you choose to go through your metamorphosis, without giving awareness through to this kind of solution, it can't really happen. It requires your full participation to succeed. I really want to encourage you guys to agree to your initiation. Whether you're at the beginning of it, you haven't chosen your initiation, or you're in the midst of it, continue to choose your initiation. I'm encouraging you to do it because this is the fastest, most dynamic metamorphosis that you're going to experience. It will be scary and it will be most certainly difficult, but you have everything it takes. You're equipped with everything to thrive. Spirit helps to co-create our experiences with us. Sometimes we are divinely timed to wake up, and there's often a set of circumstances that lead up to that divinely timed awakening. Circumstances where you start to become more self-aware and take your power back through small agreements that gradually progress into much more difficult circumstances. We're co-creating this experience with the universe. Depending on where you're at, we're going to do a bit of a meditation practice here. I really want you to just ask yourself what resonates the best with you. So solution 1, 2, or 3. I know this channel is called Awakening, but ultimately your path is a self-awareness path that requires your participation, and you have free will to decide if you want to choose this or that. For me, I always wanted that deep transformation. I wanted that complete transformation to happen where I felt more attuned to my authentic self. Authenticity has always mattered so much to me from, I don't know, since I could remember. When I was growing up in Hawaii, I love the authenticity of people, of culture, and I always took that with me. You know, I grew up in sort of chaotic circumstances, dysfunctional family stuff, and I saw how it was pretty normal. Everyone had some kind of dysfunctional family stuff. I remember even talking to friends about it. They would talk about their problems at home. This was in elementary, by the way. I would talk about my problems at home, and we could relate to one another. So that authenticity was always what I was looking for in connections with people and whatever I wanted to create it. So that's what I wanted. How do I become my full authentic self? And to me, solution 3 felt like that. Now, let us practice opening up the dialogue so that you can co-create with spirit right now. I want you to put your hand on your heart and ask spirit, or whichever title you prefer. Ask sincerely. I'm ready to learn, to take the next step. What would you like me to know? And I want you to just listen. Now, as you take that guidance into your next step of transforming your life, I want you to also take these additional tips with you. Take courageous steps. Don't half your effort. Being courageous means living by a creed you truly believe in. Whatever choices you've made that are not a match to your core values have to change in the direction for the choices that are a match. 2. Stay committed even if it is hard. Just today, I was watching a movie called The Sound of Hope, and it was about a town of a pastor and his wife lived in this small town where his wife kept feeling called to adopt kids. They had 2 kids of their own. Her son was disabled or mentally challenged. I would say mentally challenged. And she had a daughter. So they already had kids, but something kept calling her to adopt and help kids. So she went to a class to learn about adopting kids, and that encouraged her to really believe in the dream being fulfilled. And she brought it up with her husband, but he was very reluctant to do it. He wasn't interested in it. He's like, no, absolutely not. We have a good life as it is. Taking on other kids, especially kids from traumatized backgrounds, that was their intent. That's going to be difficult. How are we going to be able to help these kids? You know, we're just a humble pastor and his wife with 2 kids living a very modest lifestyle. We don't have riches by any means, not riches in monetary value. But she still kept feeling called to do it. And then her sister was the first one to adopt a boy. Soon after, her and her husband adopted 2 siblings. And then they adopted a young girl. She was 12 years old, who had a very traumatizing background and was very difficult to work with. But they inspired their town. The church inspired their town. 22 families ended up adopting 77 children. 77 of those kids were able to get homes. They were so committed to the process. They knew, as the pastor and his wife, they knew that they were setting an example for their village. I want to call it their village, the tribe, the town. They were setting the example. So they knew that if they went through difficulties, they were going to have to find a way to dig deep and handle it. And there were so many times where they just felt like giving up. They felt so overwhelmed. They were financially being very challenged. Everyone in the town was going through their own trauma because they had adopted kids who were very traumatized, had trust issues, had safety issues. But what they decided together is they banded together and they decided to support one another, pray together, cry together, and push through. And today you see this pastor and his wife, and they're so passionate about the cause of helping kids to get adopted even now. So after they adopted 3 kids, they brought in 1 more, believe it or not. It's not easy. Sometimes when we're asked to take guidance and we're asked to take that leap of faith, it's scary, it's hard, it's difficult. When I was asked to take a leap of faith this past year, it was very difficult. There was a lot of crying. There's been a lot of crying, constant crying, because I felt so overwhelmed. It was unlike any choice I've ever made before. This wasn't a lighthearted choice, and there were so many, I guess you could say, consequences to it, or I don't know if you want to call it backlash, but there's so many consequences that unfolded that I was not expecting. I wasn't expecting it to be so hard. And there were so many times I felt like giving up and just going back to the way I did things before. But the thing is, there was a built-up of courage and faith that went into making that choice, that I just didn't want to disappoint myself. I didn't want to give up. And so I kept going. I kept pushing myself, and I've been pushing myself. And it gets easier. It's gotten easier. At some point, there's a sort of grace that comes upon us where we start to see that everything's lining up and there's no trickery of it. You know, the universe doesn't trick us. Our guides or angels, when we're asking for help and guidance, they are most certainly providing lots of it. Lots of signs, lots of security. And if I were to reflect and think about how things unfolded, I was so lucky. I literally just got away with it. I was so lucky at every turn. I've been lucky at every turn. It just felt like it, because I was learning what it meant to have faith. I was learning what it meant to believe in something more that I cannot see. But yet somehow that trust was working in my benefit, and I didn't know. It was very unpredictable. Hearing the guidance is easy. Following it is usually hard. But committing to it is the hardest. So find a way to stay committed. Because guess what? 3, the divine notes when you step into your power. It knows when you're making those new agreements that is actually magnifying and magnetizing joy and abundance in your life. When you say, yes, I am worthy of love, the love that I am, the love that created me, this is all the divine is asking us to do, is to recognize that. They want us to constantly remember that we are infinitely worthy, but we don't know the value of that. We can't experience it until we go through things. I think I've heard a few times that sometimes people say, well, you don't have to go through that many tragic things. I would say that's true. It doesn't have to be that dramatic or chaotic. It's usually mental, that chaos that we're going through. But I would also have to say that if it isn't somewhat chaotic or unpredictable, we don't really learn that much. It has to be very interesting. So just remember that. The universe is going to find a way to make it interesting. You know, if it's not difficult, you're not learning anything. There has to be some kind of degree of difficulty that you're pushing up to climb your Mount Everest and experience your hero's journey. Because on your way to experiencing that journey, that is where you're building all of the tools that the universe has been telling you you've always had in you. You have the courage, you have the confidence, you have the phenomenal faith and belief and trust. You have lots of authentic power available to you. And there's lots of grace. You have so many of these qualities inside of you. You learn it when you're walking up or you're climbing up Mount Everest. And you're feeling overwhelmed. So just keep going. If you want to change your life, I encourage you to really just listen to the messages that you're feeling called to do and just sincerely ask. Ask. How can I change? How can I experience this metamorphosis in my life so that I can step into really creating something new and different for myself? Because what are you wanting, right? What's your intention? Usually for a lot of us, it's that joy. It's feeling limitless. It's abundance. So be clear about your intentions and what it is you're wanting to co-create with the universe. You don't have to get specifics about details, about how that's going to come into fruition. Let that all, I would say, let it surprise you. And my second encouragement is that you challenge yourself to go for solution number 3. Dare yourself. Be daring. Be bold, you know. Or if you're going to do any of the other solutions, be bold and daring with those solutions. Either way, they're all going to bring you to the same outcome, which is permanent change, permanent joy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.